Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have with me a very special returning guest, Sean Crow. Sean, how are you doing today?
Pretty good about yourself.
Oh, good, good. Anytime we could chat, about your writing and Godless Lands or Valhalla Steel or anything like that, I am golden, my friend. So I'm really glad
Yeah.
to people keep hearing me say this because we've had a lot of returning guests, but it feels really good. So anytime I can get somebody to return, I'm like, yes, we did it. So it just feels good. That was one of my goals from day one, was to make this a place where people, could keep coming back to. We're not even, I think you and
Right.
I might actually be, I think it was right around this time last year that we met, because I believe it was either right
Probably.
before or right
Yeah.
after my wife's birthday, and her birthday is the 14th of this month. So I think it was
Yeah, I think it
after.
was
So I
somewhere
think we're a
around
little
there.
bit,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're a little like a week early, but we're almost, to your year anniversary on here, which is pretty cool. So that's awesome.
There you
That's super
go.
cool. Well,
Yeah,
we'll
man.
start
No,
with
I'm
that.
always happy to be
Yeah,
here.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I always love your insight. Actually, it's funny because we mentioned Mark Timoney again before we started recording, because he had mentioned the last time that you were on, and he was like, yeah, we really got to have a David Gemmell episode. And I'm
Oh,
like, it's
I
totally
would be there,
true.
man. I would be there
So yeah,
in a
it's totally
heartbeat.
true. I had a couple other authors say the same thing. So at some point where the three of us, and then I can't remember who the other author was. There's somebody I just interviewed recently. I know it's in my notes. But yeah, we'll definitely have to do a big session there. So that'll be really cool.
Yeah. No, love to talk about the big man's works. He had a
Yeah,
huge impact.
I would love to
But
teach him sometime in a college course. My friend said that he took a class. I thought of you when he said this. He said he took a class, a creative writing class, and instead of it being like your run of the mill whatever, that the teacher taught it as a grimdark fantasy class, and
oh,
David was like the main pinnacle. So they read Legend and a couple other ones, and I was stunned. I'm like,
man.
really?
Yeah.
I was like, that sounds like, I was like, if anybody wants to do that as a Udemy course, like I will pay you whatever you want.
I will
It
give you the
sounded
money. I
awesome.
don't care what it
Yeah.
is. Just take it.
I was so jealous. Well, my
That's
friend, we'll
awesome.
start with that first one there. What have you been up to since our last interview almost a year ago?
And quite a bit. So I'm trying to think if Quenched in Blood had come out at that point. I don't know if it had. I've got 4 books out now. So that was a big to do, getting out Quenched in Blood last year, and then I just released Wrath of a Hungry God this year, about a month ago, if that. Yeah, it's been about a month. And honestly, I've been enjoying the summer a little bit. Been doing some book shows, and like just recently, I came from my local fair and sold a bunch of books there. Had a kick, and now I'm trying to put my nose back to the grindstone. I have there's a big Grimdark championship. They have the Grimdark World Championship. I don't know if you saw it there on the Grimdark page.
No, I'm gonna have
Um,
to write that down and check that out.
yeah, we've been going. Me and 3 other authors made it to the finals. So our scores just reset. They just came out with the scores. I think I'm sitting third right now. I was sitting first going in, but then after 6 months, they cut out a big chunk of them, and then
Oh wow.
you start fresh. So
Oh wow.
those other authors are bringing their A game. I was like, man, I gotta step this up. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think I mean, we're all within like 2 points, I think, of each other right now.
Okay.
So it's like every month you get 5 prompts, and you have to use all 5 of those prompts in a short story.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
it's been challenging, but
Yeah.
it's been fun though, because I've been using it as an opportunity to kind of world build. A
Mm.
lot of the short stories are based in the Valhalla Steel universe.
Oh, that's cool.
A few of them are like some world concepts I've had. They're on the back burner. I don't plan on writing them anytime in the next 3 to 4 years, but after that, it'd be nice to have those established. So I was like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
kind of
totally.
play around. And the one I'm working on now, it's going to be a Godless Lands short story taking
Oh,
place
that's cool.
within Riven when the blight hit, and the faithful rose up along with the butcher and all them. And so you have the big civil war, and kind of play out how Zia and Donovan got out there to the Godless Land. So it's like
Oh, that's
it's just been
cool.
fun. It's been fun to be able to just build those stories in it. It helps you just brings me into the world.
Yeah.
So I've been having a kick.
Oh, that's super
Frank
cool.
Dorian, I don't know if he's been on here.
No, no. People have told me to contact him, I've had so many. It's nice because now I've had so many people contact me,
Right.
or I've had referrals. It's like I'm like kind of swamped now, but I
I was
do
gonna say,
have
it sounds like it.
yeah, I do have like 14 slots left, for the rest of the year, so to speak. So I have to
Yeah.
write him down again. I keep forgetting.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He and I talk every once in a while. We were joking. We're like, man, it'd be great if me and you were just head to head in the finals. That'd be awesome.
Oh, that would be
He's in the
cool.
finals and I'm in the finals. So
Oh
we're
wow.
clashing.
I don't know how I mean, I'm sure because I haven't really been on Facebook very much except to, to post things. I haven't been, scrolling or anything, pesky
Yeah.
writing gets in the way of, social media.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Social
must have missed
interactions,
that.
period.
Yeah. So this is which I was just curious, and for our fans too, which group was that? Do you remember?
Uh
Was it the
Grimdark, something or other.
Grimdark Fantasy?
I can
I know
look it
you
up
and I
for
are in
you,
like
but
three of the same
we're in
ones.
yeah, we're in, if you're in a
Because I
few,
would I
you're
would
in a
love to
dozen.
check that out. So
The Grimdark Fiction Readers and Writers.
I am in that one. How did I miss that?
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. He's been running it for a while.
I'm gonna definitely have to talk to them too, because that would be a good promo, I think, for them in the future. So
Yeah, it's a kick, and honestly, that'd be a good spot to put some of your podcast too.
that's true. Yeah,
Spitball.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really
But
cool.
yeah,
Well, I'm
man,
gonna have to
that's
check that out. So
yeah. It's been fun. It's challenging too, because sometimes you're like, I have no idea how I'm gonna fit these two prompts
yeah.
together in a story, and you're like scrounging. I think I used one of them. A bleeding sword was one prompt, and like a Valhalla Steel one. So I used it as like a some kind of insult. It's like, well, I'm gonna run with it. It
That's
works.
cool. Oh, that's
But
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, I would
it's a
love
kick.
to. I would love to see like if they had the prompts and then what you guys came up with, like just to kind of
Yeah, they've got
backtrack
them all
that.
there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, I'm gonna have to check that out for sure. That's awesome. Oh, that's really interesting. Well, I hope, no offense to Frank, but you're kind of you're our champion right now on our show. So I hope that, you take him all the way, I mean,
I think Frank took the lead right now. So I've got to, like I said, I got to up my game. These
yeah,
people came to win, so I gotta
yeah,
start stepping up a little more. But no,
yeah. From
it's
what,
fun, you know.
yeah. I was gonna say, from what I've heard about Frank, I mean, he brings his A game, so
Yes, he
that's
does.
super cool. Well,
Yeah,
that's awesome that you guys are, bringing each other up. I think that is just super cool. I mean, I think I told you last time when we talked, at the time I was in that one Discord, and the one guy and I were just like doing writing sprints, and we just could not stand losing to the other person. So I
right.
mean, I was like, he'd be like, I beat him. He'd be like, all right, one more, and then he beat me. I'd be like, one more 15-minute sprint. And before you know it, my wife's like, it's like 2 a.m,
Go to bed. Get a life,
Yeah.
man.
She's like, you got to work tomorrow, summer school. I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. Well, that's awesome. That is super cool. I definitely have to check that out. Have to leave some links in there for people too. So I'll make sure to put that in the description for that group. That way people can check out the battle that's going down in Grim Dark Fantasy right now. That's
Yeah,
super cool. Well, that's awesome. Well, I have to say, Wrath of a Hungry God, I know, I had, we're friends on Facebook, obviously, and I check out your stuff quite a bit. And I really love seeing people that have been on the podcast that particularly get that next book. It just feels so darn good. And I have to say, it sounds amazing and it looks incredible. I mean, in terms of putting out a great product, I mean, I feel
yeah,
like you checked all the boxes there. The blurb I felt was very enticing, from what you and I had talked about before. The kind of things you're trying to do with Godless Lands and go back to it. It really
yeah,
seemed like you, and from reviews and things I've seen, it seemed like you didn't just go back to the world. It seems like you went back in style and really did an Empire Strikes Back, so to speak. And
oh
book
yeah, I
twos
saw
are
that one. That
hard,
was a good one.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good one. I was impressed by that one. So
Well, it was fun. There's a 20-year gap, from this book to the last one. So 20 years have passed, and you get to play with new characters. You get to see how the
mm,
world has changed. Because
cool.
it's pretty barren to begin with, right? And so now, what's Riven been up to? Well, now that I don't want to give any spoilers, but how do I say who hasn't died? Anyways, yeah, you get to see, who survived and what came of them, and some of them had kids, and you see some of those characters playing a role now. You have the younger
That's cool.
generation, the older generations there, and yeah, it's been a kick for sure.
Oh, that's just cool. I like that kind of thing, where you get the future. I feel like so like not that I won't say it's overplayed, but like I feel like most people, with book twos in particular, it's I've seen a lot recently of people do this where, in the past, maybe some people, in the mid, early 2000s, to 2010 in particular would do like a 2 year gap. That seemed to be like, the standard. But I feel like
Right.
recently people have been doing right after,
Yeah.
and I don't know, as a writer, I'm like, well, there's not a lot of, I just feel like there's not a lot of wiggle room there, and
Yeah.
right,
I
you're
guess
picking
it
up
just,
right as the scene left off. I mean, it's just not really what I would do as a writer, I guess. I'm
yeah.
used to that more contemporary, where there's some time, but I think it's interesting that you put, more time there. I feel like that really leaves you with, a lot more to write personally.
Yeah. Well, and in that case, the world had to develop more,
Yeah, yeah.
and that just, all of that takes time. You get to
Mm-hmm.
see what's become of, the people that are half withers, what becomes of, Riven and Bright Ridge and all those havens that were holding out. And where the aristocracies, did they crumble? Did something new take its place? So much can happen, which makes it like, okay, I'm stepping back in, but I'm stepping into almost a new world
Yeah,
still
yeah.
because it's developing. But every story is different. Valhalla Steel to Quenched in Blood, I picked up right almost a few days after. I mean, then some time skips, but
Yeah.
I think it just depends on what kind of story you're wanting to tell and the
Yeah.
events that are happening. So,
I
yeah,
just find it interesting because for my fantasy series, I want to turn it into a sci-fi. So I have the fantasy, like Brandon Sanderson, kind of, he went and did like
right.
2,000 years later, whatever. So I want to do that gap. And I guess lately the writer part of me just finds that really interesting as a reader because I think it just sounds so cool to do. So I
Right.
just been, I've been drawing more to that. My friend just said in an interview the other day, he was like, yeah, because he did that. He's like, yeah, you just like it because you're, that's what you want to write right now. And I'm like, that's probably true. But that my
There's, yeah.
writer brain's like, well, my writer brain's like, there's just so many things I'm thinking for you, for instance, where it's like, it would be cool if that happened, or be cool if that changed. Like it just to me seems really fun from a writer standpoint. So
Yeah. Well, and like Gwyn, he did it with his it was the Faithful and the Fallen series. That
yep,
second
yep,
series takes place what, like 150 years after
yeah, something like
the
that.
events of the
Yep,
first four books. And you're like, oh,
yeah,
that's really cool. And it was kind of neat. You're like, okay, I'm familiar here, but so much is different.
yeah,
It's pretty interesting how he did that. I thought that was a good move on his part.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, it's like Star Wars did that with the comics after the Yuzin Bong. They were kind of like, which I liked because they were kind of like, oh, we've done these characters and now, I don't want to say what happens, but even though it's been like almost 20 years ago, but they're like, oh, there's this ending. And then I'm like, okay, I'm like, I could really use something new. And then they actually went into the future and went with his like great 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 grandson, something like that, Cade Skywalker, and the Empire changed. The whole premise changed, and it was just so cool. And you had like these dark Jedi who now were actually just like gray Jedi that worked for the new Imperium, and it was
Right.
like the new Republic had turned into a new Imperium, and it was just there was just so many cool stories and things and characters that came out of it. It was an interest. It was the first time I personally had experienced a major time jump, in a familiar setting. And it was super,
Yeah.
super cool. And actually, Luke Skywalker ended up being a force ghost for his like
For his great
descendant.
great
Yeah.
great grandson.
It was something like that. Yeah. But it was really
Yeah.
cool. So it was very
Huh.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
didn't see. I never got. I watched the movies like everybody else growing up, but I never like dove into Star Wars. So it's cool. I didn't even know they had that kind of a history. You
oh
know.
yeah, the comics the comics and books go so much further
Oh
than
yeah,
the
they've.
movies. I mean, it's just it's so like when Disney came out and they were like, this is no longer canon. I mean, I have shelves and
Ugh,
shelves of the stuff, I
yeah.
was like it's some of the best writing that I've ever seen, from any genre. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy moly. I know a lot of
Yeah,
people
just do
still,
away with
yeah,
all that. It would have been cool
yeah.
to jump into that and make movies about that, instead of twisting
Everybody was
everything that
the
was established.
Yeah, no, and the crazy thing is everybody was the perfect age for the Yuzum Bong series, and it's
Mhm.
like even if you didn't want to do the whole thing, like people were all set there. They would have had more characters that people like myself would have gravitated to. There was already a lot more diversity of characters at that point with men and
Yeah,
women being Jedi and all these things, and I felt like they really shorted people, in terms of the writing, but you know,
yeah.
they're Disney, so it is what it is, right?
Disney's going to do what Disney does.
Yep, they make money either way. So,
Yeah, pretty
uh,
much.
well, for me, I always like, especially when I can, obviously, we talked about your second book last time in a different series, but it's always interesting anytime I can ask somebody about a second book period within one of their series. So I was curious
Mhm.
with that third question, what was the most exciting thing to come back to with book two here in the Godless Lands?
You know, I had some younger characters, I think, that were fun to just, okay, here's who you were. Like, for example, this doesn't kill anything. So, like, uh, Iggs and Zia, they have a child, and it's Cadell. And Cadell is fun to play with because I've had that time to really dive into her history and who she was before the blight and her family and where they came from. And then Iggs, everybody knows Iggs because he's one of the main characters in the last one. And to have that mix, be like, okay, well, what would a young man come out like being raised by those two, and then you have the influence of some other characters in there, and I really like doing Katrina's in there, albeit she plays a smaller role. Um, she'll shine a little bit more in book three. It was just fun to like kind of play with my own genealogy there. Like I get to see how they're going to develop and what they
Yeah,
become,
yeah.
what traits they take on, and it was neat. And I kind of like that aspect because father son relationships are something I like to write about, and to have someone like Iggs who has Iggs's background and what challenges he kind of run into and things like that. So really it was the relationships, and I dove a lot more into Riven because you get to see just how depraved they become. You
Mm.
know, you get to develop that culture more. Before they were kind of like these foreign, strange cannibals that were like, okay, these guys are crazy. But now they have a whole, I got to dive into their faith, how they worship the hungry God and how that works and what's required of those who serve
Oh, that's cool.
and the named, and of course I love named characters. So a lot of new names come in. You get the Flayed, you get, there's a number of them that the Raven was fun. uh, I don't know. I just love diving into those. And I'm a big character guy, that. So
Yeah, yeah.
I just love developing that portion of it. The world is fun, and I love to world build, and I feel like I've grown a lot there. But characters are my bread and butter.
Yeah, no, that's fair. What would you say is maybe going off of that more? What was one thing that maybe you had some trepidations about? Maybe, maybe was there something that you were like, oh, is 20 years gonna work? Or, was it, do I leave these characters in, take these characters out? I just was curious that maybe what was something that you were not
You
looking
know,
forward to or was challenging.
I think, and I wouldn't say I wasn't looking forward to it. It was just something I knew I needed to develop more. And it was something Anthony Ryan told me. He goes, "Hey, you should probably look into world building, go in a little deeper. We want some histories." And then my dad echoed the same thing pretty much.
Hmm.
He goes, yeah, maybe later on. And so, I mean, there is a considerable depth difference from Godless Lands to Wrath of a Hungry God. I mean, it's night and day. And I kept on, I knew that because I'm so drawn to characters and their story, it was something I had to go back through. Even when I sent it out to a chunk of my beta readers, I ended up going, oh, okay, here's where they'd like to see more. And I ended up adding 20,000 more words to the
Oh,
manuscript.
wow.
And
Wow.
so, I had all these people like, oh, I love this. And God, a little bit more there. And the more it was something I was hesitant to do, I was just like, man, am I going to be overdoing this? But then once I got into it, I was like, oh, I'm having a lot of fun with this. Like, this is entertaining. And then I was talking about, how they came over to this country, with Astok, the Darkling. I even got to touch in a little bit on where he was from, because obviously, you have a mainly European setting, and then you have this dark-skinned swordsman pop out, and so how his family got trapped there. They were traders and they got trapped in these ports, and they weren't able to get out when the blight hit, and
Hmm.
how that developed, and how he grew into that life and became basically the Raven's apprentice. And you know, yeah, there was so much more depth I got to add in, and I'm really happy I did it, because originally I was like, I think it's good. Then I thought I was like, no, I can do better. And so I added that in there. So that was something I am still developing more, and I'm liking it. But before I was a little hesitant for sure.
I
But
feel like that's fair. That seems to
yeah,
be
I'd say that was probably the biggest one.
yeah, that's interesting. I do feel like, I've had quite a few people who have talked book two, and if, particularly fantasy, and, have said, this was my time to really, get the world building down and, improve upon it. So I think that makes total sense, but
Yeah.
that's super cool. You kind of answered one of my personal questions there, because I was wondering, where that character came from. So that's super
Oh,
cool.
yeah. Yeah, no, he was one. And it was just I wrote I wrote the intro a long time ago. Like, I usually write intros and I visualize endings first. And it just clicked for him. I was like, man, that'd be cool. Someone that just had to rise up through a bunch of having to deal with a bunch of people that are completely foreign to him, and
Yeah,
how that
yeah.
would be, and what he would become, and what their beliefs were like, and kind of tie in, their faith and how they felt about things with this just brutal world he now lives in, and how do you cope and how do you survive. And I think it won't surprise anybody. I have like the Raven who takes him on as a boy. He says, I'll show you how wolves are made, and then
Mm.
he takes him on, and they, you basically take this lamb and he's going to make it into a wolf. And so yeah, that was entertaining just to have the culture shock, to have all the changes and all that. It was, it required more of me than I anticipated, and I enjoyed it.
Mm. Well, that's awesome. Let's say what you just said right there. I think we could just end there. If you guys don't buy Godless Lands book two, like, this is not the podcast for you. Like, holy moly, that sounds awesome.
uh,
I it's just, you got so many great tropes, but I feel like you did them in a really unique way. And
there's something to be said for tropes.
yeah,
That's how you got to do it. I grew up loving, as we mentioned before, David Gemmell, right? Nothing he wrote was amazingly unique, but it was how he wrote it. I think I read
yeah,
something on him because he was a big Louis L'Amour fan.
yeah.
And
Oh, Louis L'Amour.
he, right. And he's like, Louis L'Amour has the recipe, right? He has a great recipe for a great story. Good guy comes into town, there's a gunslinger, but it's more than that. That's the basis. Yeah. But then you get to know the characters and what they went through, and how they developed it. And everybody likes that trope where someone shows up, there's someone bigger and badder, or, you know, me and my dad would always rank the swordsman, or Louis L'Amour
Mm,
books, you'd rank who's faster as a gunslinger.
yeah.
And, that's what's interesting,
Mm,
and so you take that and try to develop the world and world building and bring that in, and see if you can hit every one of them. But we all have strengths and weaknesses. And so play to your strengths and bring up your weaknesses.
yeah. Like, you just brought up a great point. I mean, Bruce Lee, that's essentially what he did, right? He wanted to see in those movies who the baddest person was, and he used a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
Louis L'Amour type, Western vibes, who, the, even though it was a different setting, with different people, but it was still, they were still basically Westerns, and he got that
Yeah.
idea obviously from, where he was supposed to, or, he had applied, for the position of, David Carradine's spot on Kung Fu. But that's just, yeah, I think that you're totally right. And for me, I always am like, okay, I'm like, well, what am I gonna like? Which is the trope. And sometimes it's a time period, a setting. Sometimes it's just like I'm reading H.M. Long's Hall of Smoke, and I love that she uses a priestess, like that's just really cool. And it's like a northern vibe. But the things that she does with it, it has blown my mind. And it's been very, very unique. And I'm glad that, I had her on and we talked about it. And, I'm really glad I bought book 2 right away. But,
Right.
it's cool to see, you guys, really take those things that people like. Cause I've been trying to tell people for a while, I'm like indie fantasy in particular. People are like, you hang out with indie people all the time. I'm like, well, that's what I like to read. That's what I like to write. It's not that I
Right.
don't love sci-fi. I do. Sci-fi was my original love. It's just, fantasy to me has just been really cool because, I do feel that you see more and more that people like yourself and like HM Long are taking those things that people have loved for a long time, but then, adding a very interesting aspect or, great characterization to it where it feels like a refresh, you're refreshing the genre, so to speak. And I feel like
Yeah.
this, time in particular with indie fantasy, it's like we've gotten a really good, mixture of, different writers, grimdark in particular. It's just been really cool to see. For me, it's been cool to see the transition over the last like 10 years since I first, was introduced to Michael J. Sullivan, and Brian McCullen, and some of these other
Right.
people. And it's just cool to see, like there's just been a huge shift, in really unique storytelling. So
Well, and I think some of that probably has to do with, you see more of that in indie because I feel like the gatekeepers at the big publishers, I don't know, however your views are on whatever they are, there's definitely an agenda pushed, I
oh,
feel
for
like at the
sure.
higher tier.
Yeah.
And it's not those classic tales. It's not those tropes. It's, we want something way over here.
Yep.
And I personally don't think that's working out for them too well, but they still make more money than I do. So, you know,
Yeah, it's just
um, but I
it
feel like
seems
indies, I've dealt with gatekeepers. I'm sure you have and you will. And I'm sure all of us in the indie field have sat there and gone, man, I know that's a good story. I know people like that. And I'm just going to push it on my own. And you can. I mean, we have the ease of access to do whatever we want.
yeah, yeah.
We don't have to worry about somebody coming in and saying, no, don't do this. We have control of our product. And
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing. I think that's why indie is really starting to take off more and more
Yeah.
because people are tired of the gatekeepers. They just want to read stories. They don't care about your agenda. They just want to hear
Yeah.
a good story.
Yeah. Well, it's just
My two
interesting,
cents.
well, I agree. I mean, my wife and my mom just asked me and my brother, they're like, like my birthday's coming up on the 28th of this month. And they're like, what do you want? I'm like, honestly, I'm like, you guys can just pool together. I'm like, I don't want anything other than I was like max $50 Amazon card. And they're
Yeah.
looking at me like, well, I'm like, well, I have a Kindle. And they're like, well, you don't really like that company. I'm like, no, I don't. But I'm like, I really like my friends. And I said, all my friends, are either on there or on Nook. So I said, if you want to do half and half with that and Barnes and Noble, I said, I don't really care. But I'm like, that's a lot of books, and
Yeah.
but I'm just like, I don't know. It's interesting because in the past I've been like, oh, just get me, this card or whatever. Um, but it is interesting to oh, headphones might have died. um
Oh,
I got it back. It's just
all right.
interesting, to to see the differences in stories.
Mhm.
And they were like, oh, we should just get you Barnes and Noble. And I'm like, oh, it just doesn't cut anymore because I'll go there and it'll literally sit in my, that stuff usually burns a hole in my pocket. And now it just,
Oh, yeah.
just kind of sits there, and I'm, yeah, I would just much rather, get a Kindle or, a Nook, but somebody, that I know, is going to give me the type of story that I want. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I say this, and there are still some amazing traditional
Oh, for sure.
people out there, but like, I don't know if I know you probably have a list of books, but I would even bump this ahead of my own. Anthony Ryan's The Pariah,
Oh,
and his newest one, The
The
Martyr.
Martyr. Yeah.
Those are some of the best books I've read in the last decade.
Oh,
I
wow.
am so hooked into that. Like it has been a long time since I finished a book, and then I was like hungry immediately for the next one. I was
Mm.
like, oh no,
Oh,
I
okay.
need the next one, and I read
Yeah.
that, and he's he's hit his stride there. I feel like I think he's really he knows, he's got his formula down on how to get these characters to pop off the page and the depth and complexity of it. I loved every second of reading his last two books, and it's I've always liked his work. Even his first books, the first ones I like more than the later ones, but you learn. You and I both know that you learn the more you write.
Yeah.
And anymore, I'm just going, man, he's got it. So that's cool. My big aside from Indy, I'll make an exception for him and Evan Winters, and then everybody else can
go
their own way.
I really want to have him. I want to have them both on the podcast at some point. Those are gonna those are on my
That'd
season 3. Yeah, I was like, oh, because I mean, I just love listening to Anthony talk in particular. I mean, with Wizards, Words and Words, Brian McCullen talked to him. Ben Galley did. Like anytime he's on a podcast, I just love the way he talks about writing. Like he just listening to him talk about writing makes me want to write. And sometimes when I'm just down in the dumps, and I just don't want to write anymore, I'll just go back and listen to one of those podcasts and just listen to him talk about it. I'm like, okay, I just kind of bring myself back up.
Spirits are back.
Again.
You know what we got to do.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah. He's another big, David Gemmell fan. So that's really cool.
Yeah. He's top-notch guy. I mean, I see the guy as a mentor. I'm sure he just sees me as another guy he just gave advice to that day, but
I've heard a lot of people say that, but then, with how he talks about people, I feel like that's not the case. And it's so cool to see somebody who, has done what he has done. And, like Adrian, like Tchaikovsky is another one. Like Andy Ware is another one. It's just cool to see when people do really well, but still retain those indie roots and help people as much. Because you're one of oh my God, I think I lost count, Sean. You're one of 10 or 12 authors that, I've had on the podcast who they might not have said it in the podcast, but before, they've mentioned him and we're like, yeah, I have just crazily approached him, at a con or, message him on, whatever app or whatever. And he was just so nice and responsive and, just super cool. And I do think that, I just think there's something to be said for that, when you've been in the game that long and, you're still willing to help anybody. I mean, that's he sounds like my kind of guy,
honestly, that set the bar of if you want to be a classy professional in this world, look at Anthony Ryan. That guy is a class act. So, if I ever get big like him and, fingers crossed, but I hope that I still, right. I hope that I'm still able to help people like he helped me. And, that's something that really stuck with me. So pass that along, and keep that going because we need more people like that.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where it's kind of one of the reasons why I started this podcast last year is I want to talk to different authors, but it kind of drove me nuts with how many new people I saw. Like Sarah Torn had some just crazy stories of people, just mistreating her that she never even met, and I'm like, you just should not be treating people that way at all, let alone trying to enter an industry, and I was like, I don't want to ask for a lot of things. So I'm like, well, maybe if I provide, like a free service, I'll get to learn and, get to talk to people. And at some point, my best friend, he's like, I thought you were supposed to ask these people for something. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'm just addicted to being one of these days, I just want someone to go viral. I want one of my TikToks, because now I put everybody on TikTok. Right. So, when this episode comes up, anything you've written, I take the book covers and I'll put it on TikTok. And I'm like, I just want one time.
Have to add you on there.
Yeah. I'm like, I just want one time where Sean or, Mark or somebody gets to 1.5 million views. And I would, you know what I mean? I would feel like I made it, and I know at some point that would help impact sales. And that just, to me, is just so much cooler than, whatever else I thought might happen or whatever. And it just is really, really neat to think about. So that's one reason why I just keep interviewing people. I'm like, one of these days we're going to make it big, it'll be really cool.
It's just like anything, keep plugging away at it.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, so you talked a little bit about Godless Lands 3, which is really exciting for me. Um, I just love seeing people go from, who I found them book one and then, they just keep going. It's awesome.
Mhm.
Feels really good. It also makes me feel, very motivated, to do myself, because, obviously when you see someone else do it that, it just helps make that, a more reality for yourself. Which is another
Yeah.
reason why I do this podcast, because I want people, to be able to see like you can do this too. But I'm just curious, like, do you, like you talked about endings, and things like that. Do you already know, like, are you going to end Godless Lands with a trilogy, or, are you
Um,
going to,
well,
or this
so
particular story will be done with book three?
I've mentioned this to a couple of my readers, and they weren't happy. I said after book three, I'm going to step away from the Godless Lands, and I've got that doesn't mean I'll never return, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I I have so many ideas that I have a hard time staying in a world
Mm.
like Valhalla Steel. That one Godless Lands will probably stop at three, and I probably won't revisit it for a long time. Valhalla Steel, it has probably 4 or 5 books in it, and not necessarily all in one story. Like just that world, I'm completely enamored by it. But that'll be something like, yeah, I'll write in that world every once in a while. But I've got some big ticket stories that I really want to get into, and so before I published Godless Lands, and I think I might have mentioned this last time, I had written like a 192,000 word manuscript
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
called Gods Reborn. And I tried to go traditional with it. And I got to the point where I realized that where I thought my skill level was, it just wasn't there yet. Right. I
Oh, I
needed to
know that
develop it.
feeling.
Yeah. And so I go, okay, I need a Louis L'Amour story, a good
Mm.
formula. You've got the formula, put my twist on it, create my own world. I said, and that'll be just a solid book. And even then, like there are flaws with that book. There are things that I contemplate going back and fixing, but I'm not a person that looks back. I got to keep going forward.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
Godless Lands is there, and it's like I was selling books this weekend, and I told this one gal, I said, "You are going to see where I began and how far I've come in the second book, because book one, yeah, lots of people liked it. Um, I'm going to be the first person to say all those 5-star reviews. I don't agree with them. I think it was probably a 4-star book, 3.5. Uh, the pieces are there, but you know, it's a skeleton. It's a skeleton of what I could. And Wrath of a Hungry God, I feel like I've really started to put some meat on those bones.
Yeah.
Like it's really cool to see where I've been and where I'm at. And I can't wait for the time where I look back at Wrath of a Hungry God and go, man, look where I'm at now. And I hope to do that with
Yeah.
my God's Reward series when I go back to it, because like me and my dad were talking about it. He sells Damascus knives and swords, so we shared a booth. And so I'm selling books, he's selling blades.
Oh,
And
that's
so
cool.
we did what we've always done since I can remember. We talked stories, oh, this would be cool if this happened. That would be cool. And we got on God's Reborn. And so, yeah, I'll probably be revisiting that. It's probably going to be in another year or two, but it's coming. So,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, I don't think I'll stay there in the Godless Lands. It's not necessarily dead after book three, but it'll be put aside for a while, and I'll be moving on to different worlds, different stories, different people.
Oh, that's
Be
cool.
fun though.
Sounds like you got that fourth book syndrome that everybody talks about. You're like the fifth person that's like, yeah, I've hit my stride at book four. And that seems to just be the book, like it just seems to be the level up, the natural
Yeah.
progression, for whatever reason, and like I just had a couple people on, like 5 people on this weekend, but they were saying, like, all of them actually. So I guess you're the sixth author to say that this week. But they, had said, like I felt like, I did progress from books one, two, and three, but really that between that third and fourth book, like something just happens. And to
Yeah.
me, that's just like really exciting. So that's super cool.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, man. And you're getting, I mean, you're just telling me you're gonna do 5 book blitz. It sounds like when you do, that's
Yeah,
that's
I'm cheating
Sanderson
though.
level blitzing, man.
I'm cheating. I'm so cheating though, because I'm doing so instead of so instead of doing like so we did this we're doing this for advertising purposes. But I think it'll be interesting to see, because I had some people that said, like in order to do a prequel novel, they said split it up into 3 novellas. And I was like, no, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do either a prequel novel or a novella. Well, then I had such a great idea on how to split up a 3-act prequel novel into the 3 novellas. And then one of my friends was like, he said that he did that. And then he sent me a couple other authors that did the same thing before book one. And, you know, it was just interesting that then when book one came out, then they put those together all in one set. And then that became like a full prequel novel. And
I see.
yeah, they're like sales skyrocketed.
Huh.
And I don't know. I think it's because some people bought 1, 2, 3, some people bought all. And then, but they said right from the start that, we're going to eventually put them into this box set. And it was just interesting because then you have 4 products to peddle, right? In terms of whatever.
Right.
And like some people that maybe want 1 or 2 or 3, and I'm writing them as like, you can literally come in at any point. But it is a lot better if you come in, 1, 2, and 3, but you could come in at any point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're discussing it. So we're discussing it. But I'm kind of cheating because with the 4th novel thing, because I had already written my fantasy book. So I've been working on that. So I was trying to make this urban fantasy book 1 for Nathaniel Withers series. He's going to be a monster hunter. He's an ex-recon Marine. Has crazy things happen to him, and he wants to figure out why as he's thrown into this crazy world that has been, the hood's been pulled up, and now he's actually seeing it for the first time. And he realizes that like he thought he was a pretty, macho warrior guy, and then he finds out that he's kind of an infant, and now he has to find people to help him really make sense of this craziness that has happened to him. And he has these encounters with these monsters, and I have such a great origin story for him that I'll finish writing now. But we're hoping that I can do the 3 prequel novellas, and then we're going to put them together as like a sale before the actual
book comes out.
Yeah, so I'm hoping, and I've already written, the other fantasy book. So I'm hoping to kind of jump to that 4th book, kind of like you have. I won't quite be there, obviously, because it's not really 4 full books, but we're hoping I can get pretty close to that with that 1st book, and then we'll already have the everything set up ahead of time. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if it works, but I'm just kind of excited because when you first popped on here, I saw your 4 books behind you, and I was just like, I don't even care what happens. I'm like, I just want to be able to have my 4 books behind me. They just look so good. I'm like peeking over your shoulder trying to pay attention. But yeah, they look really good. So that's like one of my new mini goals for next year. So when we get our 3rd one in, I'm hoping to have my 4,
there
sitting behind.
That'd be awesome. We could be matching.
It'd be cool. I'm hoping you have like 8 by then. But yeah.
Oh,
what's funny though?
We'll see.
I just have to share this with you. It is funny because one of my friends talked about like his Godless Lands 3, his version, and he said the same thing. He's like, yeah, I'm just gonna, go this way. And then all of a sudden he sold like a ridiculous amount of copies. And then he goes, I saw the sales report pop up on a group that we're in, and he sends me a private message. He goes, I see you saw the news. I said, yes. I was like, how are you going to do this now? He goes, I guess I'm writing a book 4. But it totally blew up. So when you were saying that, in my head, I'm thinking like, God, I hope book 3 blows up for you. Like,
well,
really funny.
What I hear, and it's nice to see because I can look at my sales now and they're just steady. Like before it was like I started questioning myself with Quenched in Blood. I was like, man, I should have switched series. I should have just finished one, which Anthony Ryan told me, finish the series. Don't be branching out like that until you get a series done. But I don't listen very well. So, but then, I put the 2nd one out and now it's like, but now those books are starting to get picked up because people like Godless Lands and Wrath of the Hungry Gods. So they're like, okay, what else has this guy got? And so it's really great just on that aspect, just seeing that, oh yeah, I can do this. Like this is starting to pan out,
Yeah.
It's just solid, steady, and you see ups and downs depending on posts and whatnot. But yeah, man, it's nice, and I'm looking forward to keep pumping them out. It's like I told my wife, I said my goal was to get 5 books in 2023 and have 5 books out. So we're looking like we're gonna hit that goal.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's super cool. What is one writing tool or strategy you would like to try in the near future? Could be anything.
I've been told by you, by Frank, by a couple other authors, those writing sprints.
That's helpful.
You
have to find a good partner, though. You have to find a good partner.
Yeah.
Like if you ever want to
do it with a partner, though.
It's like working out. Like if I'm like, there are certain times where it's like right now, for instance, I'm just getting back into, because I hurt my back really bad the last couple of years. So I'm just getting to the point now where I can, work out by myself and I'm feeling confident. But I know within the next couple of months, I just know myself. I know I'll be back to my old shape again, if not a little bit better. Because what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I've rebuilt myself in a particular way. And I feel like that with writing too has started to come where now I'm starting to struggle by myself again. Like, and I that's how I am when I get to workouts like this. It's like I'm going to start to need a partner again. And I wanted one this summer, but because of my schedule change, it didn't work. And it's been the same thing with writing. So, like, let me know, in the future if you want to, get some sort of schedule going, even for 15 minutes. Like I usually try to do 2, like back to back, for like 30 minutes. I'm really big into the 30 minutes a day. I know I've talked about this in the last year on the podcast. People are probably tired of me saying it, but 30 minutes a day of writing, 30 minutes a day of exercise, 30 minutes of anything at this point. I mean, that's what I've done recently, and it has just been, very beneficial. So I want to keep reiterating that with our audience, like especially with writing, and exercise, just 30 minutes a day. Like that's all you need, but even 15 minutes, right? That adds up a lot. But
it's better to get something than nothing.
Yeah, totally. I just find it so helpful.
I've been a word count guy for so long, and that was advice Quinn gave me. He goes, I do a word count. He goes, I think he told me he did I can't remember if he did a daily or a weekly, but I love a weekly word count because I can hammer out that word count and then there's no pressure early, or it's like, okay, I got to be steady. And, with my last release, I've kind of taken a break from writing. Like I've written those little short stories, but I haven't been working on much else. So this last week I was like, okay, we're going back to the word count and it feels nice. It's my comfort zone. I can always, I'm a 5,000 words a week. Like if I can bare minimum 5,000 words a week, I'll get my books out when I want them. And sometimes you get 10. Sometimes you struggle to get 4,822. You're going 23. Nope, not half of those will fit. But I've been a big, but I know I need to switch things up. I don't know that I'll ever get in notebooks. Like I always have notebooks. I love to have notebooks, and I'll jot things in, but I'll jot them in and I'll never touch them. Like I'll never even look at them. I'll be like, oh, it's in here now because I wrote it down, but now I don't need you. So
it's funny that you said that. Let me just grab my stuff here real quick. So it's just funny that you said that because I just put all my stuff away.
All your notebooks?
So there's another one here too. So I got this one, which is Paladin story, and it's like like a cross and everything. So it was a gift. So I have like probably 20,000, 25,000 words of a story in there. This one's like a Viking like thing. I think most of this notebook is full. I got this one's like my own fantasy world sort of thing. I think I got like 15,000 in this. This one I had written. I think you can actually, you can just see all the words. I mean, this is like a whole story. Man. Yeah, I think I got like 30,000 in that story. The list just goes on and on and on. I got like 4 other ones here too. So I used to write a lot in the notebooks. I have 3 or 4 idea notebooks that I don't know, something that I just got used to after a while. I hurt my hand. I had surgery a couple years ago, pretty bad. So like I can't write that much anymore. So I type a lot more, but I don't know. There's just something old school about the notebooks, particularly the idea one. I have a little red one here, just full of writing ideas. And I don't
Yeah.
care what anybody says. Some people, some older like veteran authors have been like, oh, if you can't remember the idea, it's not a good one. And I'm like, no, that's not true because the way my brain works is, out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know. My brother just bought me one actually a while back, and it's so nice though that I like don't want to write in
I
it.
do-
but I told him I was like, he goes, I really want you to do your next book in that. So once I'm done with like my current 5, I'm gonna go back and rewrite one of these in that one and then retype. But yeah,
yeah.
I highly recommend it. I have so many, like I've used
See,
them for
I
years,
when
but
I was younger, I did, and like when I actually the time I actually did use notebooks, and it was when I taught public school, because
mm,
like between periods and like
yeah, yeah,
it was like this is my freedom between between the cracks of be like, okay, get this idea done really quick. Okay,
yep,
I got to go to a meeting. Is it a meeting I need to know? Nope. But you still got to be there.
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember there were a lot of meetings that you're like, I don't need to know any of this information,
Oh
but I'm
yeah. I
here,
mean,
so I'm going to spend this time writing.
yeah. I mean,
You
that's
know,
how I got like most. This is my first fantasy novel done. So I had the Chromebook with me, and I don't know. I was able to pay attention and get, draft 1 done,
get things done.
last
Yeah,
school year. So you know how it
nice.
is with those meetings. It's like
Oh yeah, I
you're
know
like, I
exactly.
probably
Those
don't
were
have
my
to go.
yeah. They are not going to talk about anything that relates to me, but they
Yep.
require me to be there.
Yep.
Okay, well, I guess I'll be writing in my notebook here.
Yep. My buddy asks me all the time, my co-teacher, because he knows, because I'm like, if it's important, I'll pay attention. But like, if
Yeah,
not, I'm like, I'll just say a couple things and then I'll just start typing. I'll be like, oh, okay. Really, I'm just like trying to figure out how they get from point A to point B, or which magical item to put in, or who to change this guy's name to. And he's always teasing me.
great.
He's like, how many more words you got left? Like, what chapter are you on? During the middle of the meeting. But yeah, I don't know. I just sometimes I get really into the notebooks again. I don't know. I'm starting to think that maybe that's my problem recently. And like, I'll go through it's the same thing with working out. Sometimes I'll try really new stuff, and then for a while, I think I just get bored.
Yeah,
I think I need to start thinking back to things that made me productive because I went back recently this summer to things that I really liked with working out. Well, I liken working out and writing very similar, because I have a lot of the same tendencies. So
oh
I
yeah,
think that I've just been getting bored with my routine. So I think like you just said, I think I need to bring back writing sprints, honestly, because that
yeah.
really helped me last year. I mean, that helped me finish, my first book after like 14 years. So, or I guess draft 1. But yeah, I think, yeah, notebooks is probably another one that you mentioned that I think I was just thinking, it's funny that you said that because I was just thinking about that earlier today. I was like, I need to
Right.
pull out that notebook that, my brother gave me. But yeah, I highly recommend that and writing sprints. I think that those have helped me so much over the years. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It seems
Yeah,
weird,
it's
right? Because they're
something
really low tech, but
I did try writing sprints a couple times, but maybe it's a partner thing I need to do, because I sat there and I was like, I feel the exact, even though I gave myself a time period,
yep.
I was like, go. And I was like, my brain doesn't like this. It's like, I want to start out at a slow jog. I don't want to be
Yeah.
sprinting right now. Like, okay, well, these, but no, maybe it is something I need to change up. Might switch some things around.
I just think my
Yeah.
friend when because I tried it by myself and it did not work. That's why
Yeah.
I would do a couple of words. I would do whatever I could, and then I would wait because this guy and I, Josh, were on a different time zone. So I would literally wait till 9 p.m. during the pandemic to when he would get on, which I think he must have been somewhere near you because it was like a 3 hour difference.
Yeah.
And he would be like, "Hey, Dan, I'm ready." So I'm like, "Okay, here we go." And I'd go one. I'd be like, I only got time for 2 tonight. And then before I know it, we were doing like 6. And then before you
Yeah.
know it, I had just in an hour written like 2,000 words. And I
That's
think it
awesome.
really just has to do with that, just that basic instinct that if you see somebody, if I run up to you and we're on the sidewalk and you're talking to somebody and I run up, I'm like, hey, race you, and you're gonna be like, yeah, no. But once I start running, even if you don't chase me, there's gonna be something in you, that you're like, oh, I should have done that, or you go. And I
Yeah.
really think that's just like a basic, instinct. And I think that the writing sprint, with just a little bit of competition, is one of those things, because him and I would be like, and it was cool because when we were in, they gave us little trophies. So like we'd have a trophy and then it kept track. Like it
Right.
was like
How many trophies
gamified.
you got? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And like,
I can see
and then
that.
he beat me. And then the next day I'd be like, today is the day. So then all day, till 9 o'clock, I'd be speaking of notebooks, I'd be writing stuff down in the notebook, or I'd
Mhm.
outline or whatever. And then by the time I would get to that sprint, I was just so much more organized. And
Right. You were
I
prepped,
just
ready.
went, yeah, I was prepped. So, and it's
See
like,
that.
it was like a mental game. But like I'm reading Malazan Book of the Fallen with my best friend, and we have been for 2 years, and we're almost done. And I gotta say, if I didn't have him in the book club with me, I would never have gotten through even Gardens of the Moon by myself. And now I've thought of
Yeah.
reading differently too. Like I'm like, oh, maybe there are some books that I've tried in the past that I actually would enjoy, but I would enjoy them more with a partner. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
what my recommendation would be. It was very
Hmm.
helpful for me, very beneficial.
Give that a shot. Force me to socialize more.
That's fair. That's fair. A couple of my friends, they just get on Zoom and then just do it that way. I never considered that. Like they'll get on Zoom and then I usually do like meditative music, just like really low,
Yeah.
just like I can't do silence, but I also can't do words anymore. I used to do like those 90s songs, where you didn't realize the words, but eventually it
Right.
like creeped in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess that's what they do. And like, or they do
Huh.
like some sort of instrumentals, and one of them will play it and then they'll just write and they won't talk for 15 minutes and then they'll set a timer, and then it'll go off. So yeah, there's all
That's
different ways you
interesting.
can do it. It's very
Yeah.
interesting. I know some of my friends meet up in person and stuff with whoever. I have nobody here that I can do that with in my town,
That is a
unfortunately.
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like so jealous. I was like, oh man, everybody went to Gen Con today and this week, and I'm like here, like, just hanging out. That's why my wife,
Just
she's like, you
hanging.
did it. But she goes on the way back to the mall. She goes, you really wanted to go to that thing, right? The general thing. I'm like, Gen Con, yeah. She was like,
She said,
like, she was like, is that why you did like 6 interviews this weekend? I'm like, yeah.
yeah.
I had FOMO bad. I just saw everybody's photos. That's why I wasn't on Facebook, which is probably why I missed, some of the grimdark stuff this week. But that's awesome. What is one thing? Oh, I'm really interested in your answer for this one. What is one thing you want to look back on in your career and see that you accomplished, other than beating Frank in this current competition?
Right. Other than being took my answer. No, something I want to look back on, happy that I accomplished. Oh, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I might disappoint you with this one. I don't know that I have that kind of thought process. I just love telling stories. So I guess for me that it wouldn't, it's not necessarily the sales. I mean, sales are great and you want to see people buying your book, but I think one of the biggest accomplishments is just seeing it on my shelf. And I would love to, I think to really feel like I've accomplished what I set out to do is to walk into bookstores and see my books, and I didn't have to hustle to put it on there. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
didn't have
totally.
to go visit this bookstore and talk to you people for you to carry my book. You knew my books were good and you carry them. That would be, that would make me feel accomplished, I think. You know, I think, yeah, I don't think anything else could really take that place. That would be big. And then after that, who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'll have some bigger goals after that. But for right now, that would be it.
That's a good one. I mean, I'm gonna go back to Anthony Ryan again. I mean, I did listen to an interview where they talked about the pariah, and a couple of things, and I don't know. He seemed to just be like, I'm just happy that that happened to him. He's like, yeah, I'm just happy to see them on the shelf and that people are enjoying them,
Yeah.
and I think I agree with you. I think that to walk in, like my independent bookstore here, she's known from day one that since she opened 2 years ago, that I was going to be, writing and, and publishing. And I keep teasing her. I go in there the other day and I'm like, Laura, they have a shelf of, local authors. And I said, by
Yeah.
next year, I said, I'm going to need my own shelf. And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm rapid releasing. I was like, in a year and a half from now, I was like, I'll have 8 books out. So I was like, I'm gonna need like half that shelf right there. So I was teasing her because I told her, I said, in 3 years' time, I said, I guarantee you I'll fill up one whole shelf on there by myself. And she's like, okay. She's like, let me know.
Yeah.
She's like, we'll cover it. And but I do think it'd be really cool to, just to go to Waterstones or something like that in particular and just like see your book there. That would just
Yeah.
be really, I think it'd
Like,
be cool to go into 3 different stores, 3 different,
right.
and see it. So yeah, that'd be really
Yeah. I
cool. That's a
think
great
that's the goal.
answer. You see, you didn't let me down, Sean. I knew you'd get a really good answer. That's also the third answer in a row that people have said, in terms of just that. Like, I had 5 indie authors this week, so you're my 6th one. Yeah, so you're the 4th person in a row to say that. So I mean, I think that's just
That's the goal, man. For where
it's
we're
just,
at right now, I think
yeah. Isn't it
that's the
interesting though
goal.
I mean, I do find it interesting that indie authors, and I do think people mistake indie for, for being something different, because every indie author that I've talked to on this question in particular, the goal has been to have more access, not sales, but to have more access for their book to get to more people. Because that's essentially what you're
Yeah.
talking about, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, and
you know what I
I
mean?
mean,
It's
the
just
sales
cool,
will come along the way. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
if you're
yeah.
on a shelf, you've got good sales,
Yeah.
so your sales are good if bookstores are wanting to carry it.
Yeah.
But I think that is right there shows, hey, you're not wrong. You are a good author. You've got what it takes,
That's true. Yeah.
and here's a testament to it, right?
Oh, that is
Well,
true. Yeah.
because it's true. I mean, the stigma of indie is still there because there are a ton of people that put out crap.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there is. I mean, and I think it's refined now. I think you can go into certain groups and Dirk Ashton, Fletcher. These guys are going to have solid
Yeah.
material, but there's still a whole field out there of people that don't commit themselves to doing it. That think, hey, I'm going to put this. I've spent $10 to get this cover done, and like again, I'll go back to Anthony because he's given me some of the best advice. You got to invest. You got to invest
Yep.
yourself. You got to invest your money. You got to be willing to do that. You know, and so yeah, I mean, I think there are enough of us out there that are taking it serious and are really looking and gunning for that goal. But then again, you still have those people out there that, hey, I wrote this, and I see posts like, I wrote this 100,000 word book in a month and I'm publishing it in a week. And you're going, ooh, I don't want to read that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and you're going to put something out there and probably needs to be drafted a few times, edited several
Yeah.
times, but you're just going to put it out there. So, and I get it. I mean, people are excited, and that's the downside to having that ease of access is you do get
Yeah.
people that are just out there to throw them out there.
No. Yeah. Well, it's like I've had probably, I don't even know. I lost count of how many people they're like, hey, where can I find your books? I'm like, nowhere yet. I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm like, they're not ready. I'm like, I'm not about to put. I'm a patient guy. I've been doing this for 15 years now, and now I got this one here. I got a bunch of that I can finish up relatively quickly now. Based off of just better habits and things. But I just
Mhm.
personally know that it's like Brandon Sanderson, right? He wrote 13 books before he actually like really finished
Gracious.
one. I know,
Yeah.
right?
And then
And I'm just
he
like,
surprised everybody with 5 hidden books he's
yeah, I
been
know,
writing in
right?
secret. You're like,
Yeah.
damn you, Sanderson.
Well, I just always laugh because I'm like, I get that it's like he's like, oh, I didn't want to fix things, so I just wrote another book. And I'm like, I think that is how most people are, but I do feel that you never really truly learn then. Like this draft too has taught me so much about, like, it's really like I tried going 4 or 5 times, and restarting different ways. And I was like, it's just not ready. I'm not ready. Which is why
Mhm.
I'm looking to something else. I don't want to waste time and not write. And I got this other idea ready to go. And I actually switched point of views. I'm doing first person, which I actually really like, probably because of the Dresden Files. and
Oh yeah.
Iron Druid Chronicles, Patricia Briggs, Mercy Thompson, and stuff.
Hmm.
I think it fits the genre more, during first person POV. But yeah, it's interesting, because now I got, a third person, I got a first person, a couple different genres going. But yeah, it is interesting. Like you just want to go back to, you said earlier, it's interesting what you learn along the way. So I
Yeah.
think that I don't know. It's always cool to hear people just answer those last two questions because everybody's given a different answer. All of them been very unique, but at the end of the day, they all just came from a writing standpoint and not a sales standpoint. So to me,
Yeah.
it's interesting. And I think that's why indie, just personally, get on my soapbox, I think it's why indie just in general has been doing much better lately. Cause I do feel that, you know, like, yeah, you're trying to sell a product, but really it just seems like a lot of indie people I talk to really just want to tell the stories.
Yeah.
In particular, I don't think anybody doesn't want to tell their stories because even traditional
Oh,
authors, right, don't get those huge Stephen King paychecks or anything. So I'm not saying
I
that,
know.
but
Yeah.
it's just cool to see. It's cool for me to see everything evolve in the last 10 years because my first brush with indie was just really cool when I met so many authors at the same, um, you know, like signing and everything down at the very legendary Poison Pen in Scottsdale. But to see, to get into it around that time and to see everything evolve has just been super, super cool. And like you said, like with, Mike, Dirk, and, these other people, Crystal Matar, it's just cool to see these amazing books come out and, to be, you know, considered in the same, genre league with certain people, like, oh, indie fantasy. Like, people used to say that as like a slur almost, but now it's like a
Yeah.
point of pride, and I'm like, yeah, indie fantasy. What? Like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
But it's been super cool to see the progression for sure. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Sean. Well, we'll get to that last one there. Do you have any news, updates, promos, or current projects that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I did a little bit of that, I think, when I said I was going to eventually end the Godless Lands, but that is in the projects. I've got a couple irons in the fire. So, um, one thing, I'm in that grimdark competition. So it's me
I
and
can't
three
wait to
other
see that.
authors. Yeah, it's been going on since January. Every month is a new prompt, and we've
God,
been
where
getting
am I
scores. And
then?
yeah,
Can you tell I've
well,
been busy, Sean, or what?
yeah, yeah, that's how it goes, man.
Jeez.
So I have that. I'm in a horror anthology
Oh, that's
um,
cool.
with some of the SPFBO 7 finalists. I'm actually part of my little group, the Marmite Gang. We
Oh, that's cool.
It's me, H.L. Tinsley, Tim Hardy, Jacob Sanix, Bjorn, PL's what's PL's last name? I'm drawing a blank on it
Oh,
right now.
Stuart.
Stewart, yes, thank you. So we chat just about every day, and
Oh, they're
a
great
bunch of them are
people.
in it. Oh, they're awesome. I love those guys. I talk to those authors more than I talk to most people in general. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're the crew I like to run with, and so Holly asked if I wanted to be a part of that, and I was like, yeah. And so I have this kind of, there's a couple short stories I wrote several years back. Oh, did I lose you?
Oh, no, we're
Went
good.
black for a second. Yep. Uh, I wrote when I was writing a ton of short stories like 2-3 years ago. I had these hunters popping up with Wolfkin. It was kind of like a 17th, 18th century supernatural flintlock fantasy, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
And and so I go, oh, this would be perfect because we all have to pick like a body part that has to be relevant within the story.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
so I was going, okay, I'm going to run with my Wolfkin, the Black Wolves, a hunter, and he's tracking. I don't want to give anything away, but yeah, I'm cultivating the story. I got to get my first draft done. It's like 10,000 word maximum. So I'm going to get that out. That anthology, I don't know when it's going to come out for sure. I know we're still looking for cover artists, stuff like that. So
Mm.
I have that. Then another project I might be put together is once this competition's over, the Grimdark one, I might be taking all those uh, Valhalla Steel short stories, expanding
Oh,
on
that's
them, and then doing
cool.
another deal like I did with Valhalla Steel. And because
Oh,
I
that's
get to play with the
cool.
Fae and all that. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
the third Godless Lands book will be out next year. So
Oh, that's
a lot of
cool.
irons in the fire, a lot of stuff
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on. but that's the big ones.
Oh, that's super cool. Oh, I just want to remind our audience that, you can find all of Sean's, well, first of all, you can find our first podcast anywhere where you're watching this one. So you can go to the Spotify, RSS.com, the other 40 places that we are right now. You could go to my website as well. That's in the description notes for this one. Sean is actually still our first episode with Sean is actually still our trailer episode. On Spotify. So if you're on Spotify, you could actually just go right to the trailer right at the top and find that episode. Season 1, episode 8, actually. I know that for a fact. But don't forget to go to the description and you can find his books right there. That way you can go there. Just don't forget, like we've been talking, particularly the last really all of season 2, just don't forget, particularly any author, but indie author, please make sure you are reviewing those books, because if you like books like Sean, getting those reviewed are gonna keep them in business, so you get more books. So just want to remind you guys there. I always tease Christopher G. Brenning because he's like, oh, you're always helping me. I'm like, Christopher, I'm like, I'm selfish, man. I'm like, that book was brilliant. I'm like, the second one he sent me, I can't wait to get into it. And I'm like, I'm selfish. I'm like, I want a third book, and I'm like, after that,
let's go.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, so I need you, I was like, I need you to make a profit so you can make me a third book. So it's not altruism, it's selfishness. So if you want to be selfish like me, make sure you're going and reviewing Sean's books here. And that way we can all be selfish together and get more books. Sean, if there's anything I can do, per always, my friend, you just message me, tag me, you email me, you let me know. If you do want to do some writing sprints, I would be more than happy to do that. Your relative evening time is my later. I usually write later in the evening or night. So, we match up pretty well there. So if you want to do that at any point, you just let me know and we can get a schedule going. But anything else I can do for you, you just let me know. And, per always, we'll help you out, as best as we can.
Sounds good, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming again, Sean. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. And I love seeing that book, and all 4 of them behind you on that shelf. That last one, though, that cover really got to me. I just absolutely loved it. It just
Thomas does some great work, man.
Yeah,
he does some great work. Favorite part, real quick before you leave, the duelist scars he put in right there, the little duelist scars. You'll see it when you look at the cover. I said, he goes, what's one little thing that you really want to stand out? I go, duelist scars, man. Cool. He's got duelist scars. That's what they have there. So
that is cool.
That guy can make some amazing
artwork. Yeah. I started following it after you had your cover come out. I was like, all right, who is this guy? I was like, I gotta give a follow after that one. That was really cool. Oh, that's really cool. I'm gonna go back and look at that. I don't think I saw that the first time because it was on my little phone. So I have to check that out, on my laptop and zoom in there. That's super cool. That's an awesome detail. Write that down for later. All right, Sean. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Anytime, you want to stop by, like I said, I'll be sending out, some of the panel stuff, for the fall and winter. And, we'll get you on there and do some world building exercises and things like that together, some characterization stuff, and we'll have some fun. So
sounds good. I'm all for it.
Perfect. Awesome. We have a good rest of the night, my friend. And I'm sure I'll talk to you soon on social media.
All right. Sounds good. Catch you later.
Later, buddy.